Hello everyone and welcome to the Tank Club. Today we're going to be showing you my Werewolf tank build, Savage. So first of all we'll take a look at the race, and I am using a Nord for this character. That is for the increased resistances mostly, because we do want to have the resistance cap on this build. We don't really block him very much. In terms of the best class to be as a werewolf, it's really kind of up to you. Now, what you have to consider is when in werewolf form, you can't use things like, let's say you're a Dragon Knight. A lot of your passives aren't going to be very useful because they're not doing anything. However, things like the combustion passive as a Dragon Knight would be useful because you can slot a poison enchant and you can proc the combustion passive. So if you need sustain, you could do something like that. But things like the Earthen Heart passives, which are really strong on a DK tank, are not good for a werewolf because increasing the duration of Earthen Heart abilities isn't useful. Battle Roar, obviously you don't use your ultimate as a werewolf because it's permanent. Mountain's Blessing, given the minor brutality, doesn't work because you don't have an Earthen Heart skill to use. And obviously the Helping Hand passive, returning the stamina, doesn't work because you have to cast an Earthen Heart ability. So those things aren't possible in werewolf form. So the best thing to look at, Sorcerers are quite good, Templars are quite good. Anything that's got kind of built-in passives where you don't need to have skills slotted or used, those are the ones that you want to go with. And Sorcerers and Templars have both of those things. The Dragon Knight has the combustion passive. So choose whichever one suits you best, but those would probably be the better ones to go with. For your consumables, you do want to be using the Smoked Bear. And the reason for this is obviously we want as much max health as possible so we can take as much hits as possible without blocking. We want the health recovery. We really want the stamina and magicka recovery because we really need those resources. So that's what we're going with here. We're also using Tri-Stat Potions to give us the recoveries even more and also give us our resources back. And then we are using the Atronach Mundus Stone because we need to be able to use our healing skill. It's one of the best heals in the game, but it also gives us stamina back when we use it when we're full health. So it has like a two-way thing. It gives us a huge heal and it also gives us stamina return if we're max health already. So we want to be able to cast that as frequently as possible if we're struggling with sustain-based situations. For the gear, we have to use a specific gear set to make this work. We have to use the Tormentor set. The reason for this is we get the max health, healing taken twice, and then when you deal direct damage with the charge, leap, teleport, or pull ability, you gain resistances and you taunt the enemy to attack you for 15 seconds. This is also an AoE taunt if you combine it with the correct skill because it will do damage as an AoE, and it's direct damage as well. So it's a direct damage AoE attack which then makes enemies aggro to you. So you want to be using the Tormentor set. Now, this isn't a bad thing that you have to use this because as a werewolf, you gain an automatic version of Minor Courage. So you're already able to provide your group with basically the same buff as wearing the Claw of Yolnahkriin set. So if you think about it in this way, you're losing the Claw of Yolnahkriin set, but you're still maintaining that buff, and you're bringing in a set that you need to be able to taunt. So you still have that buff on offer, but you need this particular set to be able to taunt. If you don't use this set, then werewolf tanking does not work. The next gear set you're going to use is Turning Tide. This again is another great set, so we get max health, max stamina, more max health, and then when you block, gain flowing water for 10 seconds, causing your next bash attack to deal magic damage up to 6 enemies in a 5 by 10 meter line, but you also apply major vulnerability for 10 seconds, which increases their damage taken by 10%. So we can still provide this in werewolf form. So doing bashes, blocking attacks, getting this debuff onto the enemy is a really strong way to improve your group's damage. So we've also basically still got the Yolnahkriin set, and we can combine that by using Turning Tide to increase our group damage by even more. So another great set. On top of that, we will also use the Spulder of Ruin. You have to activate this before going into werewolf form. If you don't do that, it's not going to be active. So you have to crouch to turn it on, and then this will be active throughout the fight. And when you do so, you gain that Aura of Pride, and when your allies are stood inside that, they gain 260 weapon and spell damage, but it does reduce your health, magic and stamina recovery by 70 for each person who stood inside that. So that's why we really have to try and push our recoveries up by using the food that we do and by drinking potions, and we have to maintain those recoveries or else we're going to have a real problem to kind of counterbalance the Spalder of Ruin, we are using 1 Magma Incarnate, so we are going with that because it gives us a 129 Magicka and Stamina recovery for just wearing 1 piece. So we wear that on the head just to get that. We also make sure we're using 511 so we can maximize our stats and all our different bits of passives to make sure that we've got the best optimal setting that we can. In terms of our traits on the weapon, you want to go with charged. It doesn't matter if which way you're going to play this, so you ideally want to use absorb stamina with the charged one-hander. And the reason for this is because when you do that, you're able to provide minor breach. So we can get major breach with one of the werewolf skills, but we're missing out on lots of pen. So we get minor breach by using the absorb stamina enchant combined with the charged trait, and that means that we can bring more pen to our group. The amount of pen that you get from doing minor breach is better than providing crusher, which is why I'm not doing so. And obviously if I was going to provide crusher, I'd need to use a 2-handed weapon as well as I go into werewolf form to be able to benefit from that. On the armor, we've got Divine's pieces on the shield, the head, the shoulders, the waist, hands and feet. That is to increase our Magicka recovery further with the Enchants Mundus stone. And then I do have reinforced on the legs and the chest just to make sure I hit that pen cap while in werewolf form. Now you do have to remember that obviously you gain the pen cap by also using the Tormentor set. The Tormentor set brings those extra resistances in the 3600 that you need to reach it, so you need to make sure obviously using that leap ability to make sure you proc your Tormentor set for both your taunt and for your resistances. On the body pieces we just use tri-stat. The reason for that again is because we get over 2000 more total resources than if we were just to go with a single stat enchant. So the tri-stat enchants, yes, they're expensive. If you've already got a set of Turning Tide gear, it won't matter. You should probably already have a set of Turning Tide with your prismatic enchant on the body, so that won't be a problem. You can just convert that straight onto your werewolf tank, and then you can use that. Tri-stat is the best way to go. On the jewelry, I am using 3 infused, and that is with a reduced stamina cost of abilities. The reason why is because I only have 1 Magicka ability, and I have a lot of Magicka recovery from both the food, the Divine's gear, the Enchants Mundus stone. So we don't need to reduce the Magicka cost of that 1 skill. Blocking with stamina and then having all stamina skills can become very, very difficult. So you could use 1 bracing enchant here to kind of reduce down your block cost if you need to, or you go with the 3 stamina cost reduction to reduce your stamina skills, which is basically, like I say, all of your skills are stamina apart from 1. So being able to bring down the cost by quite a considerable amount will have a big effect. So you definitely want to make sure you're doing that. Onto the skills, we use Brutal Pounce first, which is basically our taunt and our Tormentor proc. It pounces on the enemy and deals bleed damage to them and nearby enemies. So you focus it on the middle enemy. So whenever you see a group of enemies, try and point your cursor at the middle one, leap onto that one. It should taunt everything in the nearby area, because your Tormentor set will proc. You'll get the resistances, you'll get the taunt, and you'll activate this skill. You then can use it a second time to do additional damage on top of that, to do more damage. So you want to use that kind of twice, because you don't really have that many cooldowns to use on a werewolf tank. So you might as well go and cast that twice. The first time for the pounce, the second time for the damage. The next skill you've got is Deafening Roar, and this skill is basically your debuff skill. So it terrifies enemies, so it can be used as your crowd control. If you run into a pack of enemies, you leap in and then you use this skill, and it's going to fear them so they stay in place. It causes them to go off balance, so if you heavy attack an off balanced enemy, you'll get more resources back. So if you're running low on stamina, send them off balance by using this skill, and then heavy attack to get a huge amount of stamina back. It also applies Major Breach and Minor Maim, so you reduce the enemy's spell and physical resistance by 5948 and their damage by 5%. So you get a good number of debuffs in there to help your group. And while slotted, you gain Major Savagery and Prophecy, increasing your weapon and spell critical, which obviously isn't important, but as a werewolf tank you might as well be outputting some damage because you are kind of very damage orientated even though you are a tank. The next skill is Howl of Despair, and this provides basically, it does damage and a synergy for your group. Now the synergy is in power, which isn't amazing in this current patch. It means that heavy attacks are going to do 80% more damage. That might be good for some groups where they've got heavy attacks coming in, but it's an extra group utility, so you provide a synergy. If people use the synergy, even if they're not heavy attacking, they're going to get a little bit of resources back, so that's nice enough. It's the damage that you're using this for. So this is the skill that you're going to cast the most frequent. It's quite cheap with our cost reduction, 1,859 stamina. It's quite a cheap skill to use, so it's not too bad. You do want to be using this more often. So your other skills have got kind of longer cooldowns. This one you can cast more frequently, so you can cast it and you keep casting it to do more damage. So if you want to output more damage and you've got the resources to do so, this is the skill you use to do it. Next, we've got Hircine's Fortitude. Great skill. This is going to give you the best heal in the game for tanks. So it scales off max health, and in some content I've used this. So I've used this particular build in Asylum Sanctorium +2, and I was healing myself for 55,000 health with this skill. Obviously then the healer had provided me with some basic healing buffs, and then when I self-healed, I got myself an enormous heal. So this is just the best heal in the game for self-healing. It is very expensive though. 5,622 magicka. The reason why I haven't gone with any magicka reduced cost here is because this is the only skill that you've got. Even with like 15k, 20k max magicka that you might have, you're going to be able to cast this skill 3-4 times. You've got lots of magicka recovery, you're going to get it back. You shouldn't need to be spamming this to keep yourself alive. So you want to use this when you're as at low health as possible, because it does such a huge heal. You also gain minor fortitude and minor endurance, so health and stamina recovery increased by 20% when you've got this going. While slotted, you also gain major brutality and sorcery, increasing your weapon and spell damage. And if you are at full health, you get 3,000 stamina back. So you never want your magicka bar to ever be full. If your magicka's full, cast this skill, you'll either get a heal or you'll get 3,000 stamina back. Whichever one, depending on the situation, it's going to be useful. So never allow your magicka to be full. Use this skill as soon as your magicka's like near full, so you can make use of either the increased 3,000 stamina or making sure your health is topped off. Next, we've got the Claws of Life, and this is a long duration skill, so you shred enemies in front of you. With Tainted Claws, you deal disease damage, additional damage over 20 seconds, and you're healed for 67% of the damage caused. So it's really nice to use this, especially in ad pulls, so that you don't have to spam as much Hircine's Fortitude. You just get your Claws of Life. When it hits multiple enemies, it will heal you for more. So it will just constantly tick heals. It's a heal over time and a damage over time skill. So it's a really nice one to have. And it's like I say, it's got a long duration, 20 seconds, so you can kind of cast it and leave it, and then focus on your other cooldowns on your other skills. Finally, the way that we transform into a werewolf is with Pack Leader, and the reason why we use this is because it's basically the morph for tanks. So basically, while you transform, your max stamina is increased by 30%, you take 10% less damage, you summon 2 dire walls, you grant yourself and nearby allies minor courage, the same buff as the Claw of Yolnahquin set, increasing their weapon and spell damage by 215, and while slotted, your stamina recovery is increased by 15%, and that is an unnamed buff as well, so that's on top of everything else, even more stamina recovery. So that is the morph you have to go with. If you go with the other morph, then you're not going to get as many benefits. Obviously, you want to take all your werewolf passives. You don't have to take Blood Moon, because that means you can infect other players, so they can become werewolves. That's a choice, but you do want to take everything else. So you've got the Devour passive, which is one that you already get. That means you can devour corpses, so you can consume a corpse to make sure that you stay in werewolf form. You shouldn't really need to do that if you're staying active in combat. If you're attacking and you're active in combat, you won't need to really do this. But if you're going through long phases in, like, let's say a dungeon, and you're running from one place to the next, you might require this to be able to maintain your werewolf form throughout the entire piece of content. But it's not difficult to do like a whole dungeon without ever coming out of werewolf form. Every second you spend devouring a corpse adds 3 seconds to the duration of your werewolf transformation, and you restore 8% of your max health for each corpse devoured. So you can get a nice bit of healing from it, but you really haven't got time in combat to get that heal, and that's the only time you'd really need it. Pursuit is the next passive, increasing your movement speed by 30%, increases the stamina your heavy attacks restore by 50%. So that's really good. So when you've got an off-balanced enemy, you get increased resources back when you heavy attack them, but you've also got an extra 50% from this, and you've got increased resource gain from heavy attacks on your heavy armor passives. So you've just got so much stuff that's giving you so many resources. You can get basically from 0 to full stamina in 2 or 3 heavy attacks. So really, really strong. Blood Rage, when you deal damage, the duration of your werewolf transformation is increased by 4 seconds, and you can do this every 5 seconds. So obviously you need to be light attacking frequently to maintain your Crusher enchant, especially. So you want to be doing that. So this is going to proc on cooldown. You should be able to maintain your werewolf, no problem. Savage Strength, it gives you the major resolve, which again, another really strong thing. Nearly 6k resistances, topping us off to the resistance cap, meaning that we don't take very much damage at all. We also get increased weapon and spell damage, which is a nice little bonus as well, so we can do a little bit more damage. And then Call of the Pack reduces the cost of remaining in your werewolf transformation by 20% for each transformed werewolf or direwolf in your group, including yourself, to a maximum of 80%. So we've basically got a 60% buff straight away here, because we've got ourselves and the 2 direwolves, so that's 60%. So that's reducing the cost of remaining in werewolf transformation, because we've got that particular choice of ultimate as well. In terms of the champion points, you obviously want to go with your damage reduction, so Ironclad, Duelist Rebuff, Enduring Resolve, and Unassailable. If you want to really buff that self-heal, you're going to be casting it more often. Focus Mending would be another good choice that you could go with instead of something like Unassailable. You don't really need things like Bulwark. One of the important champion points that you want to pick up here as well is when you go into the Extended Might section, you really need to take Battle Mastery, increasing your chance to apply martial stats effects by 30%. This increases the chance with our one-handed weapon of proccing that Minor Breach, so you really want to have that as well. On the red CP, simply just go with Balanced Vitality to increase max health, Fortified for the resistances, and Rejuvenation for the recovery. And then you want to take things like Bracing Anchor would be your best bet, because you want to reduce that damage when you're blocking. There's nothing really else that's worth taking. Increased movement speed can be nice, but you don't really need it. You've got increased movement speed in werewolf form anyway, which is going to be negated slightly by Bracing Anchor, so you could switch to Celerity in ad pulls if you wanted to, but it's nicer just to go with that reduced damage. So this build is obviously a werewolf tank build. It's not aimed at endgame content. It's not aimed at doing trial content. Although you can do it, it doesn't mean that you should, because you are going to impact your group a little bit by not having a full tank setup, for example. So it is fun if you can convince people to allow you to go and do it, then that's fine if people know what to expect. But definitely don't go jumping into like random trials with this kind of build. Doing dungeons and things, very easy, very fun. It can be done. But yeah, this is just a fun and casual build to enjoy, just something different. And I really like doing it. I've done quite a few trials and different pieces of content using this build, and it works really nicely. But like I say, it is for fun. It's not intended to be like a main build. It's not intended to be for that end game content. So just think about that when you are setting it up. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you check out the Tank Club Discord if you need any help or information about tanking, and the tankclub.com website. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.